Recording in progress.
No, he didn't even know.
I mean, at the end of it, I was like, this guy's.
I was asking him,
Will act like him or no man.
he was saying to me, hey, Sengwe is your friend, please talk to Sengwe. That we go. I can't what? Gary, I will never put a person under such. Even myself, I will not.
Good morning, DECO team. You are not muted. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Morning, Danielle. Morning, Chair.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Vasu.
Morning, Danielle.
Yes, you're welcome, Dr. Vasu.
Thank you, Chair. How are you doing?
I'm fine. No problem. We are starting now.
Okay.
Yes, and we take this opportunity to welcome all the members of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation. We also welcome the staff attached to the Portfolio Committee, the staff attached to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, the leadership of the Department of International Cooperation that is here on the platform today. We've got the DG also who is here, Ntate Dango. the media that is joining the proceedings of this portfolio committee today through platforms provided by Parliament as part of ensuring transparency and deepening of democracy. We also welcome South Africans who may be following
Recording
the
in progress.
proceedings of today's meeting on various platforms provided by Parliament, including Channel 408, if it is streaming live there. Lubabalo, can you give us apologies?
Good morning, Chair. I have one apology, Chair, from Deputy Minister Masleko Dlamini. She's on an official visit to Ethiopia, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable members, today we are going to be getting a briefing from Dr. Vasu on the situation in the DRC. After that, we will get a briefing by the department on the African Renaissance Fund and the department's performances. So before we proceed to item number 4, I just want to officially welcome Dr. Vadu to this portfolio committee and thank him for having agreed to come and do the briefing to the portfolio committee. But at the same time, that briefing is a briefing to South Africans, as I've said, who may have made time to follow the proceedings of this portfolio committee. We hope that the briefing can intensify our understanding and deepen our understanding on some of the complexities that are arising in that part of the African continent, in the DRC, including the role that South Africa is playing there. Just before we commence, honorable members, Dr. Vasu Gounden is the founder of the executive, and the executive director of the African Center for Constructive Resolution of Disputes. It's known as ACCOD, which he founded himself in 1992. Today, globally, it's a recognized conflict management institute, and it has been rated by Pennsylvania University's annual think tank in the top 100 globally. In 2018, Dr. Vasu founded also the Global Peace to mobilize a global constituency to strengthen multilateralism and to build a better world. Dr. Vasu was a Fulbright scholar at the Georgetown University, where he graduated with an LLM, and is admitted to the High Court of South Africa as an advocate. Over the last 32 years, Dr. Vasu has been involved in preparing conflicting parties across Africa for political negotiations, and has supported the facilitators in the peace process, among others, included is Burundi, the DRC, Madagascar, Sudan, South Sudan, and Somalia. He is currently involved in the Sudan peace process. Dr. Vasu has served on several commissions in South Africa and serves on the boards of several institutions across the world. He has addressed the United Nations Security Council on several occasions on matters relating to conflict management and has been elected by the World Economic Forum as one of their global leaders for tomorrow, GLT, acronymed as such. So having introduced briefly Dr. Vasu, honorable members, and those, as I said, who are following the proceedings of today, we will now give over to Dr. Vasu to do the presentation, after which we will allow members to ask questions or make contributions to the presentations. As soon as we are done with those engagements, we'll release Dr. Vasu so that as a committee we can proceed with the other business of today of engaging the departments on performances, as I've said, of both the department and the African Renaissance. There's a sitting today at 3:00, and we hope that by lunch we will have done with the two items. Over to you, Dr. Vasu.
Thank you very much, Chair. I see there is a hand up. I'm not sure if the hand is up or mistakenly up. Emma Louise Powell.
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Vasu. Sorry, on my gadget there, I hadn't pressed the participants. That's why I didn't see the hand.
Okay.
Yes, now I have pressed it. I can see there is a hand of Honorable Powell.
Hi, Chairperson. Thank you. I just wanted to find out, we very much welcome this briefing. I'm looking forward to understanding more. Just did any briefing documents about this specific agenda item get circulated? I know last week we said we'd get briefing documents the day before. It would be helpful if they weren't circulated, if some kind of a brief was circulated after, just that we can study. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Powell. I think you are right, but we don't have that brief circulated. So we'll all be getting it instantly from Dr. Vasu. But you are right, we agreed in the past, including last week, particularly the documents that come from the department, that we need to get those documents some days before the briefings take place. So you are right, but we didn't get and do the circulation of Dr. Vasu's presentation today. So we will all be getting it now. But your point is noted here. You can proceed, Dr. Vasu.
No, thank you very much, Chair and Honorable Powell. We will make the presentation available to the Secretary of the Committee, so you will get access to that. Chair, members of the Portfolio Committee, I see Deputy Minister Bottas there and DG Dango. I just combined your first initial with your last name, DG. It sounded good, though. Well,
Yes.
Zango, you sound like a movie star now. Chair, let me thank the Portfolio Committee. It's not the first time that I have addressed the Portfolio Committee. It's always a pleasure. You represent us as a nation in Parliament, and you have oversight over governance. So we are always happy to brief this committee, as with other Portfolio Committees, so that you get a different perspective that allows you to ensure your oversight role over the administration. I am going to put up a presentation, so I hope I have the screen share. Right. Chair, can you see the presentation now?
Yeah, I caught.
Okay, great.
We can see it, yeah. Thanks, Doctor.
Okay, and then just so that we don't interfere with the bandwidth, I will just switch off my camera. I will have a short interruption, Chair, which won't disturb our presentation. There is a young woman who strapped me up last night. She will just arrive this morning to pick up a machine. In case that has got the eyes rolling of the members of the Portfolio Committee, let me assure you it was not anything untoward. They are testing me for sleep apnea since I'm very tired in the day. So they had to strap me up.
Okay,
I thought I should get the members a little excited in the morning, Chair.
Yes.
So they will come to pick up their sleep machine this morning. And if for some reason in the 2 hours you see me dozing off, it's probably because they are correct. I do have sleep apnea. Anyway. So, Chair and honorable members of the committee.
Just on a lighter note, Doc, I think we may need to procure that machine here in Parliament.
I agree. I did my articles a long time ago with Baba Archie Gumede, who was one of the first group of parliamentarians.
Yes.
And so one day I saw him dozing off, which was understandable at his age, at the time. But I called him up and I said, look, I'm paying tax. Please don't sleep in bus. You are supposed to be representing me. No, if there is a need, I can refer you to the specialist.
No
Chair,
problem.
I thought it would be interesting because not all the members would be familiar with the various dimensions of the conflict in the DRC. Nor with the statistics that characterize the DRC. So I thought that I could give that. Now, let me also say right up front, this is not a theoretical presentation because we have been in the DRC since 1997, supporting the administration of President Mandela. We have trained the rebel groups at the time, RCD, later on. We hosted the first meeting following the overthrow of President Mobutu. So it was about 97, 98. Then Deputy President Thabo Mbeki asked the court to host a meeting of the various factions, AFDL, which is currently the ruling party, which is President Tshisekedi's party, then the former Mobutus, and then many of the other parties, which we did just outside Pretoria. That was the first initial gathering of the parties, which was followed by the Lusaka Agreement about a year later. The initiative that Accord undertook was to test the ground amongst the political parties, and this was the request of then Deputy President Thabo Mbeki. Since then, Accord has been consistently and continuously involved in the DRC. We are currently still involved in the DRC, hosting last year here in Durban a meeting of some 120 signatories and guarantors of what is called the Peace, Security and Cooperation Agreement of the Great Lakes region and the DRC. The meeting was, we were requested by the special envoy of the United Nations, Ambassador Shia, to host that meeting in Durban together with the International Conference of the Great Lakes region, the Economic Community of Central African States, and that brought together all the concerned parties in the region and the guarantors, South Africa included. We were represented by the President's Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region, former Minister Jeff Radebe. So that's just to give you a sense. Now, this, you can't talk about the DRC and Eastern Congo without reflecting on the region. So I should add that we have been engaged in Burundi since 1995. We are currently still engaged in Burundi. Last week on Saturday, not the Saturday past, the previous one, we were in Burundi again for a meeting of a similar nature on the Peace, Security and Cooperation Agreement. And all of the parties, including the current president of Burundi, was trained by Accord way back in 2002 in negotiations when they were still part of CNDD-FDD rebel group. I had the opportunity to spend Saturday evening with the President Evariste on a very private meeting to get a sense of what is happening in the region from their perspective. And so what I'm presenting in a sense is also the latest information from one of the players in there, and then from all those who have been participating that. In Rwanda, we have been engaged in Rwanda for a long time also, initially taking our first Chief Justice, Pius Langa, to Rwanda sometime in the late 90s to share with the Rwandans our own constitutional making process. And that was followed with several visits by others who were part of the CODESA process to share that with our Rwandan colleagues. So just to underscore, Chair, that a lot of what I'm going to share with you is our own experience on the ground, spanning now almost, unfortunately, 30 years. I should add that a study done by one of the leading research institutes in the world, SIPRI, the Swedish Peace Research Institute, indicated that the life cycle of a conflict is around 30 years. So this is not unusual, what we are seeing, that this conflict continues, although, of course, it shouldn't continue going into the future. We should have had more experience to have resolved some of these earlier. I will, as we go through the presentation, indicate why going into the future it is actually going to be even more difficult to deal with the situation. So now if I can get my, okay. This is where Accord is. For those of you who have not been to Accord, we are based in Durban. So we are away from the hustle and bustle of Johannesburg or Pretoria. I'm not going to go through all of that. Okay, so here's the DRC, just for context. As you can see, it is a very large country. It is larger than all of Western Europe put together. So this is not an easy country to manage, and it has not been managed for many decades, if not centuries, in terms of its entire sovereign borders. So this is the first challenge that we have, and as you can see, it is bordered by a number of countries. There are a lot of links between ethnic groups that cross the border from one country to the other. So Zambia into the DRC, Angola into the DRC, Rwanda into the DRC. All of there are very, very close connections, some of them belonging more or less to the same ethnic group, speaking the same language, etc. All subjected to the arbitrary drawing of the borders during the Berlin Conference. So that has to be taken into account. So this is just to give you a sense what we are talking about. I don't know if my cursor goes there. We are talking about this region here. As you see, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Tanzania. It's that eastern part of the Congo that we are talking about, which also coincidentally possesses all the major resources of the Congo. So here's the statistics, just to give you a sense. You will see it's the 11th largest in the world in terms of land size. Then population, this is where the key is. If you look at, in the brackets, I've got 1997, because when Mobutu was ousted in 1997, the population of the DRC was 44 million. Now, today, that population is 102 million. You can imagine that in 30 years, we have added another 60 million more people, almost double the population. This is where the major challenge comes in. And when I said that we are dealing, as we go into the future, with increasing complexity, this is the complexity. Across Africa, we have got these challenges. Just to give you again from the region, the statistic, if we take Tanzania and South Africa, today we are around 60 million people. Tanzania is 62 million people. By 2050, we will be around 80 million people, and Tanzania will be around 112 million people. Okay, so we are dealing increasingly with more and more complexity in the Congo. Now, French is the language spoken, but there are hundreds of dialects that are spoken across the Congo. And if you look at the Eastern Congo, whilst the focus is on M23, the group that was formed called after March 23, that's where M23 comes from. They are not the only group in Eastern Congo. In a recent study done by Chatham House from London on the ground, they estimated 120 ethnic groups in the Eastern Congo, with different sets of grievances ranging from very, very localized grievances to regional dynamics that impact on their grievances. And of course, all of the groups are armed. So you're dealing with a very complex situation. Life expectancy, you can see, is very low simply because you have ongoing conflict and lots of people are dying. The neighbors, you can see. Then religion, you see the majority are Christian. And then you have a number of the other faiths in the region. You can see the GDP per capita is very low. And then if you look at the internally displaced persons, you're talking about 6 million people internally displaced just inside the Congo. That is a number that is estimated by the UN and others. It can be many, many more people that are internally displaced. Just to give you a sense again, if you are flying from Kinshasa to Nairobi, you could be looking down for almost 45 minutes of that flight and you will see forest. So when the first time refugees were moving in their thousands across the DRC, it was very, very difficult to locate them in the DRC. And they had to use satellites that could follow the heat in the DRC. And that is how they managed to track the masses of people moving in the forest. So we're dealing with a very, very complex situation. In terms of natural resources, the DRC has substantial untapped gold, cobalt, and high-grade copper reserves. What is estimated currently is $24 trillion of resources still under the ground in the Congo. That is a huge, huge number of resources that sit there. In 2020, the DRC was the world's largest cobalt miner with a production of 95,000 tons, or nearly 41% of the world's cobalt. Why is that an important fact? Because the current industries of the future of the fourth industrial revolution, the mobile phone, electric vehicles, satellites, spacecraft, all of it rely on cobalt. And as you can see, 41% of the world's cobalt comes from the DRC. So this is not just about the people of the DRC. This has to do with the geopolitics that are unfolding in the world. In 2021, DRC's cobalt accounted for more than 63% of global production, and most of it is artisanal and small-scale mining. So that is another tragedy of the DRC. These are Congolese who are deep in those pitted mines that are using their fingers and everything to pull out this cobalt, which they get a pittance for, if at all, and that cobalt sells on the global market for a huge amount of money. I said in the DRC to the forum that was meeting there that actually you can't talk about this problem being resolved only by us in Africa. The Swiss who were funding that meeting, the Swiss ambassador was sitting next to me, and I said, Ambassador, you know, the French translation of stakeholders when it comes through the microphone talks about shareholders. And I said, really, we should be talking about shareholders in the DRC, not stakeholders, because your government, which has its company, Glencore, in the DRC, your government receives taxes from Glencore. And so if we talk about Glencore being a shareholder with the government of the DRC, then as a recipient of a large percentage of that from tax, you are also a shareholder as the government of Switzerland. And likewise, our government is a shareholder because we have many, many companies in the DRC. So I was saying you cannot resolve this by just saying we need to bring the DRC, I mean, the countries in the region, their leaders together to resolve this problem. Because I said, Ambassador, your company, Glencore, by their own admission in documents which are now in the public domain, have indicated through their lawyers that they have paid $120 million fine for bribes given between 2007 and 2012. So we can't talk just about corruption in Africa. We have to say that it's a two-way street. You have to hold your corporate companies accountable also, part of the global mutual accountability framework. So I said, if you talk about resolving this problem, we need all the shareholders around the table, meaning the governments of the region, we need all of the multinational corporations, and we need your governments also who are host to these multinational corporations. Then that's the only way we're going to resolve this problem. So let's move on. I'm not going to go through all of what is in the DRC because we're going to share this presentation with you. Now, when we look at the size of the Congo, just to give you again a sense of what we're dealing with, Ituri province, these are the provinces that the Eastern Congo is made up of. This is where the challenges are. Ituri, North Kivu, South Kivu. North Kivu is where M23 emanated from. Okay, so if you look at the size of that, just to give you again some perspective, the total size of the three provinces is half the size of the Northern Cape, slightly larger than the Eastern Cape and Gauteng combined, and slightly larger than Mpumalanga and the Northwest combined. So you can see how big area we are talking about. North and South Kivu combined is similar in size to Limpopo, as you can see, in terms of square kilometers. And as I said earlier, more than 120 militias operating in that area. Now, just to give you a quick sense of where all of this emanated, we're not going back now in time, but we're going to 1997, the defining period when President Laurent Mobutu was overthrown and President Laurent Kabila took over the country, supported by Rwanda and Uganda. Now, there is no dispute from Rwanda and Uganda about that, because they did support President Kabila to get into power and to oust Mobutu. If truth be told, I don't think we are denying that either, but South Africa was also part of assisting at the time to ensure that there is a smooth transition from President Mobutu to President Kabila. You will remember that President Mandela was mediating in that situation. At the same time, as you can see, different African armies fought each other inside the DRC and supported different armed groups as proxies. Kabila faced a rebellion in the eastern provinces of the country, with some of his former allies turning against him, such as Rwanda and Uganda, who at the point controlled 1/3 of the country. Now, that was the rebel group RCD that was formed, supported by Rwanda and Uganda at the time. Again, a fact that they have not disputed. And it had largely to do with what they said at the time was President Kabila reneging on his agreement to be inclusive, and inclusive of the Banyumalenga Tutsis who were present in that and have also got some association with Rwanda. Okay, that's an important point because it plays itself out currently in the current conflict. In 1999, the 6 countries signed a ceasefire agreement in Lusaka. They were followed by the Congolese Liberation Movement rebels, supported by Uganda, and RCD, supported by Rwanda, who all signed a ceasefire. You will remember, as South Africa, we were heavily involved during that time with the Sun City Agreement, brokered then by the late President Ketumila Masira, and supported by Dirko at the time, Foreign Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, as well as then President Thabo Mbeki. So a lot of South African support went into that. I'm not going to go a lot into that because I want to get to where we are currently, and we can go back. As I said, you will get this as briefing notes, but I don't want to go through each of these there. Now, the regional dynamics. In 2022, tensions mounted between the DRC and Rwanda after M23 rebels resurfaced after a 5-year period of inactivity and began escalating attacks against Congolese troops. Okay, so the allegation that the DRC put on the table was that Rwanda was backing the M23 rebels. This is an allegation that has gone to and fro for a long time. So it's not a new issue that we are dealing with. M23 secured significant territory along the Rwandan and Ugandan borders. And Kinshasa accused Kigali of funding and supporting M23's resurgence. An accusation, as you can see, that was supported by or alluded to by the African Union and the United States. You know, I'm an advocate, so I must be very careful the words I'm using. Kigali again accused Kinshasa of supporting Hutu extremist militias and increased its military presence inside the DRC. So what are we talking about here? So, as you all know, in '93, there was the genocide in Rwanda, where 800,000 people were killed. Ostensibly, it was a Hutu uprising against minority Tutsis, who the Hutus accused of having a stranglehold on the country, etc. Now, a lot of those, because President Kagame, with his Rwandan Patriotic Front, the RPF, was able to successfully storm the capital and take over the country militarily. A lot of the Hutus fled across the border into the Congo. President Kagame often accuses the DRC of harboring the Hutu extremists who have formed themselves into a military formation. And President Kagame says they are continuously threatening the security of Rwanda. So this is what he is saying. On the other hand, President Tshisekedi, he's saying that President Kagame is supporting M23 militarily, with advisors, with equipment, in order to destabilize the Eastern Congo. And the accusation is that he is doing that in order to mine the Eastern Congo to shore up his own economy. So these are all of the complications. President Tshisekedi, in his electioneering for the elections that just ended recently, indicated that should he win, he will go to war with Rwanda. President Ndayishimiye from Burundi made a similar threat when he said that Rwanda is funding rebels called Red Tabara that are crossing over the border into Burundi, and that he is prepared to go to war with Rwanda. Now, I'm not saying he said this to me in the discussion where I'm saying he said it publicly. It's on record. So Rwanda, DRC, and now Burundi have been on a war footing since the end of 2022. Tensions between Rwanda and Burundi escalated after Burundi's decision in January to close its borders because of this Red Tabara group that we're talking about. Now, East Africa has put a force on the ground. It was a multinational force deployed in the Eastern DRC in November 2022 to help restore peace and stability in the eastern part of the country. It derived its mandate from Chapter 23 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community, and the EAC Protocol on Peace and Security was composed of troops from Burundi, Kenya, South Sudan, and Uganda. It was authorized by the EAC heads of state at the 22nd Ordinary Summit held in Arusha, Tanzania in July 2022. It was deployed in the Eastern Congo, and President Tshisekedi and local residents have accused that force of cohabiting with the rebels rather than forcing them to lay their arms down. The DRC declined to extend the mandate beyond 8 December 2023, thus bringing an end to the EAC deployment. We know that the UN deployment under MONUSCO is also drawing down from the DRC after many, many years and many, many billions of dollars going into that mission. So now comes the SADC deployment. The SADC mission in the DRC, known as SAM DRC, was deployed on 15 December 2023 to support the government of the DRC to restore peace and security in the eastern region. Now, I have to say that the meeting we held in Durban, which brought together all of the affected countries, Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, DRC, and of course, it brought the other SADC countries together, also Angola, South Africa, etc., and the UN and the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. All of them discussed these issues. And it was proposed at the time that what is required is a peace enforcement mission. Some supported it, some opposed it in that meeting. But I have to say that it was put on the table in that meeting. Okay, SADC then took it up. The deployment of the SADC mission was approved by the extraordinary SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government held in Windhoek on 8th May 2023 as a regional response to address the unstable and deteriorating security situation prevailing in the Eastern DRC, and ostensibly to avoid open war between the DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, all of that. That was going to be a very serious problem, not just for the region, but for the continent as well. We cannot afford another major war in that region. So this was, to an extent, a kind of stopgap. And as you know, South Africa's stated policy is to work not unilaterally, but within the context of multilateral agencies, in this case, SADC or the AU. And we have mutual defense pacts, etc. So to an extent, we have to rise to the occasion and fulfill our obligations. And that's part of why we are there. The SADC mission will support and assist the government of the DRC in the fight against the several illegal armed groups operating in the Eastern DRC to save lives, bring the situation to normalcy, and ultimately restore the authority of the state. Okay, there's a lot being said there. This is where the government of Rwanda have indicated, no, you are coming there to fight, not just to stabilize the DRC, but you are also looking to fight Rwanda. Now, that is something that I think all the countries have to make sure that we do not increase those tensions and give credence to that. We need to assure the countries of the region that we are there to stabilize. SADC's Defense Subcommittee recommended a $436 million budget for the mission. Zimbabwe's state-owned paper, the Herald, cited Angola's foreign minister and international trade minister as saying this in September 2023. Okay, the AU Peace, Security and Cooperation Agreement, or rather the AU Peace and Security Council on Tuesday, 5th March 2024. Now, this is an important point also. Endorsed the deployment of the troops from SADC with an offensive mandate. That means that the troops going there have to be engaged in enforcement. They are not peacekeepers. They will not be placed in between fighting forces. They will have to also enforce peace. The move was reached during the Council's virtual meeting held to discuss the situation against Congo and the deployment of the SADC mission. Okay, what we don't say here, which is also public knowledge now, Rwanda opposed that. Rwanda opposed that decision of the Peace and Security Council. The troops are deployed between Goma and Sake, which is a distance of 23 kilometers. That's a lot of territory to be covering with forces. Now, the SANDF deployment scheduled for 15 December 2023, but delayed to January 2024, constitutes 60% of the 5,000 members deployed to the SADC mission. Other than Tanzania and Malawi, who deployed in late 2023, none of the other SADC member states have contributed troops to the mission thus far. The Portfolio Committee on Defense in the National Assembly was informed that the SANDF is mobilizing the Quick Reaction Force and support elements to deploy in a SADC mission in the DRC in order to support the government of the DRC in its effort to neutralize the negative forces and illegal armed groups by restoring peace and security in the DRC. South Africa's portion of the SADC deployment amounts to about 10% of its 30,000 member military, making it one of the largest foreign deployments in the country's history since democracy. The SANDF code name for this is Operation Tiba, which means to prevent or to block. 2,900 troops for an initial period of 12 months. The estimated cost, 2.3 billion rand, which currently, as you know, is unfunded. This is all in the public domain, but it is unforeseen and unavoidable. Defense and Military Veterans Minister Thandi Modise has confirmed that the current budget does not provide funding for the SANDF contingent serving with the mission, but an allocation will be made in future budgets. Okay, and in all probability, we will put our special forces on the ground because it's the kind of mission that requires specialized forces. We are talking about peace enforcement here. So let me just backtrack a little. The South African government under apartheid had an offensive machinery, because what it was doing was conducting offensive operations in the frontline states. Under President Mandela, a decision was taken to move our posture from offensive to humanitarian and peacekeeping, which means that we reprovisioned, retrained our forces in order to respond to the demands at the time, which correctly so was to assist with humanitarian missions and to assist with peacekeeping. Humanitarian missions are still extremely relevant. They are going to increase as climate change takes its toll on the continent and as the conflicts that we see in the future rising. So we would have to maintain our humanitarian posture. When it comes to conflicts, we are going to see a rise in urban warfare, and we are going to see a rise in insurgencies. Between 2014 and today, there has been a 400% rise in insurgencies across Africa. Cabo Delgado is too close for comfort for us as South Africa. So to an extent, yes, we have to continue with our humanitarian posture. And in the future, there will be more and more need for a peace enforcement posture, which we are not yet equipped nor provisioned to deal with. We have few assets in that regard, which we are deploying in the Mozambique and now in the Eastern Congo. So just to contextualize that, we can have a discussion around that if you want. Now, should we be in the Congo? Because that's also a big discussion. Well, you know, when we were assisting President Masira in the DRC, and we were advisors on mediation at the time, so I spent 45 days with my colleague Jerome Sachani in Sun City, working with former President Masira. And on one occasion, I was asked whether I would go on national television, not by President Masira, but by the media in South Africa, because they wanted an independent view, because there was a lot of noise in the public about the fact that we were spending all this money hosting these people who they said are not interested in peace. They are busy gambling and they're busy eating our tax money in in Sun City. And so there was a sense to try to contextualize it. So I went to President Masira and I said, sir, you know, I've been asked to go on national television to explain this mediation in the Sun City and why we are doing it in Sun City and what are the implications, etc., for South Africans. And he laughed and he said, Vasu, go and tell your people that the 50-odd million they are spending in Sun City is just a drop in the ocean from what your country will be getting out of the DRC. That was a very telling statement, but President Masira was correct. So if you look at the number of companies that are in the DRC, we have a huge number of companies in the DRC who are in mining, in agriculture, all sorts of things. And that comes back to our tax base. That's the first point. The second is, last night in preparation for this discussion, I went just to look again at some of the developments in the DRC. And one of the very important developments in the DRC is the effort to kickstart the Grand Inga Dam project. So there is already Inga 1 and Inga 2. These dams produce enough hydroelectricity to drive the copper and cobalt mines in the DRC. But the Grand Inga, which has been on the cards for many, many years, and now South Africa and Nigeria, we are have also indicated our interest in the Grand Inga Dam. The Grand Inga Dam will have 5 large power stations generating up to 40, not megawatts now. I'm not one of those engineers. I don't know. But anyway, it could fire up half the continent. And of the 5, there are countries who are saying we could take one of those power stations and finance it. So the entire project is $80 billion currently. It could go up to $120 billion. But Nigeria has expressed an interest to take one power station. South Africa has expressed an interest. So this, because of our own energy crisis in the future, that's one. 2, the Congo River outside of the Amazon, it is the largest land river in the world. So it's got a huge amount of water. And we live in a water scarce part of the world, Southern Africa. So with new scientific discoveries, etc., there are a lot of possibilities around water and energy in the Congo, apart from the minerals and all the rest of it. So we have a huge interest. We are not just altruistically going and putting troops in the Congo. I don't think our altruism, given our own development challenges, is going to stretch that far. We have a very, very strategic interest in the Congo. And that, as I said, was outlining now, I'm not going to go through the previous SADC deployment to the DRC. The Force Intervention Brigade that was deployed in the Eastern Congo had a lot of success at the time. And South Africa was there. Our Oryx helicopters played a very important role, attack helicopters, in pushing back the M23. So I think there is a lot of expectation that South Africa will rise to the occasion and perform in a similar way in this mission. You will get all of this also. I don't want to go through all the details here. But as you see, MONUSCO, which is the UN mission, will completely withdraw from the country by the end of 2024. So let me just pause there and say something about why MONUSCO is pulling out, but the implications for peacekeeping. There are several implications for peacekeeping from a global level. Almost all peacekeeping missions are under threat. So you have seen the mission in Mali. Next week, I will be in Addis Ababa with Al-Ghassim Wan and colleagues in a meeting. Al-Ghassim Wan is a seasoned diplomat from Mauritania, has worked in the African Union for a long time. He was heading the UN mission in Mali, the peacekeeping mission. And of course, the people of Mali kicked out the peacekeeping mission in Mali. A similar thing has happened in South Sudan. A similar thing in the DRC. So peacekeeping, people have become weary of peacekeeping because they are saying we are dying, we are being raped, we are being displaced, and you have peacekeepers who are standing there with the guns and doing nothing because that is their mandate. Their mandate is to be static, to interposition between two forces, but not to engage. Of recent, peacekeeping in that form is only relevant when you are interpositioning between two entities like nation states that follow certain rules, are governed by certain laws, like the laws of war and the Geneva Convention, etc., etc. Then you can interposition between. That's historically, that's where peacekeeping came from. Peacekeeping was then adapted into internal conflicts, because after 1990, we saw a sharp rise in internal conflicts. And so peacekeepers in internal conflicts are now not positioned essentially between two countries. They are in some cases, but in the vast majority of the cases, they are pitched between a state and rebel groups, armed groups, so state and non-state actors. Non-state actors are not governed by any rules. They're not governed by the Geneva Convention, laws of war, etc. So they will shoot at you. They're not accountable to anybody. So this is what has been happening over the last 30 years. Peacekeepers have played an important role. We as a court, we assisted the African Union in developing the entire civilian dimensions of peacekeeping, which was to train peacekeepers in human rights, protection of civilians, etc., because this was a new area that they were involved in. But all of that, now, 30 years later, with this rise in insurgencies and the rise with urban conflicts, as we're seeing in Sudan, as we're seeing in Haiti now, urban warfare will be the new trend going into the future. So all of this means that peacekeeping is under threat. That's the first part. The second is the funding for peacekeeping. The largest contributor to the United Nations is the United States. We know that President Trump has indicated that he may pull funding from the United Nations. So if he does come into power in November, you can bet that the UN, which is already under stress financially, will be even more under stress financially. And many countries do not all pay their assessed contributions. So peacekeeping will become a problem. But the UN also has indicated that it is going to turn to a peace enforcement posture, so to the African Union. Peace enforcement posture means that there will be new rules of engagement, but it means reprovisioning, retooling, retraining of militaries across the world to go and engage in peace enforcement. This is where we find ourselves also. So just to underscore that, so you get a sense that this is where things are going in the future. We are entering very dangerous territory across the world, not just here, but across the world. So what are the current dynamics? And I'm going to end shortly so that, Chair, we can have at least an hour for questions and answers. In December 2023, the DRC held presidential elections. The Independent National Electoral Commission declared incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi the winner with 72% of the vote. No previous incumbent in the DRC has ever secured more than 48% of the vote, okay? Which means he has a very, very strong mandate. And remember, I said he was campaigning also on the basis that he will go to war with Rwanda, should it be necessary. And this is what we're trying to avoid. The electoral process was engulfed in widespread irregularities that made it difficult to validate results. Extensions to the voting process, illegal under law, saw voting take place from 20 to 27 December. That's a long time. According to an independent audit by the DRC's respected National Episcopal Conference of the Congo. Okay, so it's not that it was not without controversy, but the fact of the matter is the president has been inaugurated. He came in with 72% of the vote, and this is the situation that we are dealing with now. So all of the facts that we see with the elections, what has been documented, etc., is still under debate. But what we are dealing with now is the government announcing, due to insecurity, displaced people in North Kivu and Ituri, as well as residents in the M23 controlled areas, could not vote. They have promised to set aside seats for them in the national and provincial parliaments to accommodate that. Now, it's not unreasonable to say you cannot have elections in those areas, because you actually cannot have elections in the area. I know, Chair, that maybe at some point your committee might decide to take a trip to the Congo, since that's part of your oversight role. And I'm sure you will do that with protection, but you'll get a better sense when you go that this is what is happening on the ground. Okay. Now, the Peace, Security and Cooperation Framework was signed in 2013. I was telling the members of the committee when we met in Durban and when we met in Burundi last week, that if you talk about 44 million people when Mobutu was ousted, then when this agreement was signed in the Congo, the population was around 65 million. 10 years later, when we are dealing with the situation, you're talking about 112 million people. So even for this Peace, Security and Cooperation Framework, complexity has become extremely, extremely difficult. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, Chair. And I'll switch my camera on, and then we can have a discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Vasu, for that enlightening, very comprehensive presentation. Honorable members, the Minister Pandor is in cabinet. We also got an indication from Honorable Mpanza that he was struggling with network. He will join us during the course of the meeting. Yes, it's true, Dr. Vasu. Our committee approached the Committee of Defense on the need for both committees to go to the DRC to do oversight. So we hope that the authorities can approve that application. It's undergoing consideration, because it's important that as Parliament, we get to understand the implications, the progress, the context, the impact, other challenges on the ground based on the decision taken by the executive, of course, through SADC to be part of that mission, so that we can play our role as the other arm of the state, as Parliament. So we hope, all things being equal, we should be able to go there. Members, we are now opening up for discussions, for questions, for comments. So we will take the hands and then have a discussion so that we can move to our next item. There's Reverend Meshwe Muruti. There's Honorable Emma Powell. There's somebody Mutusi's iPhone. So I can't see who is Mutusi's iPhone. We don't have a member called Mutusi. And we've got Honorable Nkosi and then Honorable Mpanza. Lubabalo, who is Mutusi's iPhone?
Maitshwarelo Modula Stilo ke Mothusi.
Oh, Heban. Okay. Oh, okay. No. Okay, yeah, so in that order, honorable members, you can make your input. It's Honorable Mutusi Muntueti. representing the EFF, yeah. Honorable Meshwe Moruti.
Yeah, Lebohara. We are grateful to Dr. Vasu for a very enlightening presentation. We have a much better understanding of what's happening, particularly in the DRC. I'm going to ask some specific and direct questions. The first one has to do with the African Union that planned to silence the guns by 2020, meaning that they would end all wars, civil conflicts, gender-based violence, and so on. And it did not happen. Now the date for changing and for silencing the guns has been extended to 2030. What I want to know from Dr. Vasu is whether the reasons for failure to end the guns by 2020 have been identified, and whether there is sufficient preparations to correct them to ensure that by 2030, guns will be silenced in Africa. He also said that the life cycle of a conflict is 30 years. Does that mean that the current conflicts taking place, there will not be a firm determination to end them because of this number of 30 years, which is the life cycle? Is this not causing people who should end the conflicts to saying we are still far from approaching the life cycle? If maybe, for example, they're still busy trying to end this conflict and they only have 5 years. So they say, are they not going to say they still have 25 years to go? Now, is this not, does this 30 years not have a psychological influence on people who should be prioritizing ending the conflicts on the African continent? I also want to know whether this excellent organization led by Dr. Vasu is also engaging leaders of countries that are arming and sponsoring these wars in Africa. And if not, why not? Because there are people who are making money while others are losing their lives. And I think leaders of countries that are allowing their organizations and their weapons to be used to destabilize Africa, I think they should be confronted. Now, is he aware of what the AU as an organization is doing to ensure that these sponsors and armies that are arming African rebels, maybe, and opposition parties are challenged so that they ensure that there is stability in the country? Now, he also said that the world relies on cobalt, and the DRC has large deposits of cobalt. Now, we know that there are international companies that are making money because of the minerals in the DRC. We also heard that there are even private airstrips that some of the guys who come to collect the minerals don't even use, my apologies, don't even use international airports, don't even go through security or even immigration. They just have their landing strips and they're allowed to carry on like that. If the DRC is not able to handle that, to stop that, we know that the AU is concerned. Now, the AU as our umbrella body, are they looking into closing or maybe cooperating with the DRC to ensure that these private airstrips that are used by for a lack of a better word, one can say even looters of minerals in the DRC is brought to a stop. They are brought to a stop. And maybe my last question for now. We are aware that children are used in the mines. Children without proper equipment are being used. We have seen children digging with their fingers. And we don't hear any objection from the AU. We don't hear any objection from countries that are saying they are interested in bringing the conflict to the end. Now, children are being abused. And I would request that the South African government, in particular, have to do more to speak in defense of the children who are made, some of them even, I'm told, under 10 years old, made to use their fingers to get these minerals that are going to enrich people who don't care about the lives of African children. Are you engaging? This is my very last for now. Are you engaging, Dr. Vasu, South African political leaders who are threatening violence if their parties do not get a 2/3 majority? It is very concerning. Your organization, sir, that is able to resolve disputes could become handy in ensuring that after elections, we don't, or even leading to the elections, we don't have violence in the country. Is there any proactive action that the organization is taking, sir, to ensure that this threat of parties saying, if we don't get 2/3 majority, blood is going to flow, the country is going to be destabilized, because this is totally unacceptable. Mudula Stulo, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Meshwe. Dr. Vasu, I will ask that the latter part of Reverend Meshwe's, it's a question mixed with a comment at the same time. That you don't respond to it because it's not part of the agenda. If they want us to discuss that matter, we can set aside time. If he wants to know from his party whether you are doing something about it, he can visit your offices or write to you, or he can talk to you privately. Currently, we are not discussing any threats to South Africa's elections, whatever. That matter is not on the agenda today. Next speaker. Oh, Emma.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you to Dr. Gounden for a fascinating presentation. And I look forward to receiving it. It was very, very interesting to listen to. And it's a conflict, I think, that the world needs to pay more attention to. Just anecdotally, I was on a fellowship last year with a doctor who was displaced by the violence in the early 90s, the violence in Goma. And she grew up in a refugee camp on the border in Kenya. And she later returned to Kinshasa. She became a doctor, and she's now working in the conflict zones. So there are stories of tragedy and of hope. Chairperson, I have been sent a list of questions by my colleague from the Defense Committee. So I'm going to ask the questions, but I do understand that Dr. Gounden may not be able to answer these questions. If not, that's absolutely okay. And then there are just one or two questions I think that potentially the DRCO team could answer. So essentially, the questions are that South Africa's contribution towards the SAM IDRC will be, from what we understand, an unfunded commitment. So the first question, and this would be to DRCO, will DRCO or National Treasury contribute to any of the expenses of our deployment, given that no external funding was confirmed to the SADC for this operation? And then does our government, or could we maybe have some reflections on the prioritization of having sent forces to the Eastern DRC, given the conflict in neighboring Mozambique, Cabo Delgado, of course. So essentially, the question is, why will the SADC's forces withdraw from Mozambique, given the increased levels of conflict and brutality against the population there, and its direct threat in terms of our national security interests, rather than getting involved in the DRC, whereas, there's no direct threat to our national security interests, although in my personal opinion, we do have an obligation to assist. And then, was this 100% an SADC commissioned deployment, or was this just a commitment by the leaders of the DRC, South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania? And do we know whether or not there will be other contributions by SADC members? And then I was quite interested in late last year. I follow the Armed Forces Facebook page. We, as a nation, deployed to the DRC ahead of the SADC deployment. Was that part of the SADC deployment? Can we just get some clarity? And then again, just to preface, I do understand that Dr. Gounden may not be not able to answer these questions, given that they do sort of sit in the remit of, I would say, defense. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, House Emma. Our next speaker is Honorable Mutusi Montwedi.
Modula Stilo, madume go wena le batsenela kopanong botlhe. Maitshwarelo ke tla baakanya leina la ka sentle mo nakong e tlang.
Se tshwenyegeng e kgotswa e le maotomane.
Ke lebogile Modula Stilo. Let me also welcome the presentation. I think it's a very informative, enlightening presentation, which actually paints the conflict as it is, so that we're able to bring about solutions as to how do we think these challenges could be best resolved, Chair. But Chair, I want to ask the doctor. The doctor indicated that South Africa has a total of 60% total deployed, in terms of the total deployed members of the SANDF in that space. And also said that there are many businesses that are actually operating in that space there. Now, I want to ask the doctor to say, these deployments that we do to the DRC, in whose interest are they? And I'm asking this, Chair, because there's an issue mentioned here that there are many businesses. Whose businesses are these? Is our deployment to this part of the country that is engulfed by conflict, does it have anything to do with protecting individual business interest there? And how do we, as a country, South Africa, benefit? I know maintaining peace is of utmost importance, but beyond peace, we are maintaining peace at the same time, creating an enabling environment for business to make money. Obviously, making money that we lose through people not paying tax and all of those things. So I really want to understand in whose interest, except the issue of maintaining peace in that part of the country. What is it that is beneficial of us as a country with relation to that? And these businesses that they spoke of, Chair, that they are there, many businesses. He mentioned that it's in the field of agriculture and mining. Do we perhaps get a list or something of those businesses that are actually operating in that space? And then, no, I think I'm okay, Chair. Those are just the two issues that I wanted to touch with the doctor. Thanks very much.
Honorable Bontwedi, Honorable Nkosi.
Thank you, Chairperson and members. I also welcome the input by Professor and Doctor. The following questions for me. Firstly, At the level of the states, meaning the DRC as a nation state, the Burundi and the neighboring countries, are there engagements between and among these states to actually resolve the conflict? And to what extent, or what is the success of these engagements, either bilateral or in multilateral bodies? Secondly, Chair, I want to understand what role ACOT plays in ensuring that these states are brought together formally and informally. The third issue, Chair, relates to our role. I think it is inevitable that you will not stop business from doing business anywhere in the world. And it is not ununique. So this one goes to the department just to indicate to us what our trade relations are with the DRC. What form of businesses are these? Are these established businesses in the country? Are they registered for tax, for example? Are they established companies? And to what extent are profits or whatever repatriated back to the country? And related to that, what form of illegality are these private business entities engaged in? You have made reference to this big company from Switzerland, I think. Yeah. If you extrapolate and say, well, this Glencore pays bribe, and is it the only company that is paying bribes? Or to what extent are bribes involved in driving profits, but also in influencing and abetting conflict in the DRC? The fourth issue, Chair, is around engagements by SANDF. I think from our perspective, it will be important that we understand this move away from keeping the peace between countries and between the rebel groups to nearly engaging in enforcing peace. And this is what South African people really do not understand, that when you send troops to the DRC or any other country, you send it in the context of the mandates that are given. So if we enforce peace, if we are there to monitor and prevent conflict, it means we're not combative. But if you enforce peace, you may be required to be combative. And I just think that thin line, or that mandate, must be clarified to the population. And lastly, Chair, to what extent is ACOT involved, or the South African government and role players in the country involved in informal engagements with influential stakeholders to avoid the escalation of conflict, but also to counsel on them that, in our view, the escalation of conflict has got that consequences for regional economic development, but also for humanitarian impact in the region, and therefore to favor de-escalation and the creation of peace instead of war. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Banza.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and the greetings to colleagues. Chairperson, now I also welcome the presentation by Dr. Gounden. It's a very comprehensive presentation it paints the picture very clear as to what is transpiring there. The first question is that in this 30 years cycle of tensions in DRC and in neighboring countries, what have been the positive developments? Because the doctor has mentioned many times the word complex. We're dealing with a complex issue. Complex issue is very complex. But surely it can't be gloom and doom. Surely in these 30 years, there might be some positive developments, which I just want to know the doctor to respond to. The other issue, Chair, is that I just want to check that beside the business people who come there, but you also have private security companies who also conduct mercenaries actions in countries when there are tensions, and that's how then they just benefit business-wise in playing a role of carrying on destabilizing the countries there, so that there are companies will always be involved in one way or the other, but which is something that has got nothing to do with them contributing to preserving peace in a conflict country. So do we have a situation like that in DRC, Chairperson? The other question is that we lost, I think, if I'm correct, some few South African soldiers there. I don't know whether the number is 2 or 3. But what I want to check, what caused that? And are we going to be seeing also more fatal casualties of those peacekeeping forces also becoming the order of the day, whether it's a South African or whether it's a Tanzanian? Because that one life lost is life too many. And are there measures that are put in place that we don't have that kind of a situation? Because people, they can be soldiers, but at the end of the day, they are human beings. They've got families to support, families that they love, but because of the love of the country, and then they engage in this kind of situations, and in the process, they lose their lives. So I think we need to find out from the doctor whether that a situation we cannot have a possibility of it escalating further. The fourth question, Chair, I just want to check how safe is the country? No, I'm talking from the civilian point of view. If you're coming from another country, what security measures are put in place at the airports and in the country itself when you are engaging? As the chair was saying, that we have put an application to do an oversight, which we are waiting confirmation or rejection. But I'm not asking in relation to that, but I'm just asking ordinary citizens of the country and also people coming from other countries, what are security measures are put in place, because it's a conflict environment there in DRC. That will include also even the local civilians. So the last one, Chair, is in a lighter note, but it's also serious. That accusation that these people were not interested in resolving the conflict, the ones that were in Sun City with former President Maseri, did they really gamble and eat food? Or it was just something, imagination of the media, wanting to paint a wrong picture about the effort that was taking place there. And then what was the reason also to have that meeting in a fancy hotel and engage there when people they are dying. So I just want to find out whether there was truth in that, or it was just a serious malicious allegation from the media industry. Thanks very much, Chairperson.
Okay, Honorable Mbanza, thank you very much. Just before you come in, Doctor, the Honorable Deputy Minister Botes, I know that you are here waiting for the next item, but if you want to make a comment on this item, you can, because you are a member of Parliament who cannot vote when you are in the committee, and you are not a member of the. You don't sit in the cabinet meetings, because deputy ministers don't sit in the cabinet meetings. So I don't know, at some stage, maybe when the doctor is done or at whatever stage, if you want to. I'm not saying you should. If you want to comment, you can comment. From my side, Doctor, I think we appreciate the enlightenment and the illumination you have provided on some of the issues. You know, one of the most unfortunate things, Doctor, in Africa is that most of us are gradually drifting towards being made to forget the historical context of the problems that we are dealing with. Now, the genesis of problems in Africa is from colonialism. Now, the current states in Africa, different states, when we deal with these matters, including the United Nations and so on, we deal with matters as they occur at the moment, and we detach them from our history, that our peace was disrupted by colonialists. And as life developed, went on, and conditions change, colonialists adapt their strategies and tactics to make sure that they pursue the same original objectives, which is now characterized as neocolonialism. Because the colonizers of the African continent pursue nothing else but this greedy capitalist system. So this capitalist system, because it has managed to even build institutions of development of intellect, like universities and so on, it has succeeded in making us rationalize the problem according to the way they have sought to teach us to rationalize the problems, because the capitalist system developed the curriculums, the system of education, develop those who are teaching us on how to analyze the world and so on. So what is missing in all these efforts, which must be applauded, must be commended, and they must continue to happen, in my view, is to always, wherever we are, whether we're in the United Nations, whether it's in interstates engagements trying to resolve problems and so on, is to always remind our people that we did not, as Africans, initiate these problems among ourselves. As I said earlier, our peace was disrupted by colonialists. And these colonialists continue to be there. Now, through global trading systems, it has become more sophisticated. Because as Africans, we must also play a role in the entire world. So we get consumed, co-opted into the setup. Because of our poverty, we must survive. We must interact with the colonialists. And the colonialists, from an economic point of view, are 1,000 miles ahead of us. So we have no option but to find a way of surviving within their system. And it's unfortunate that we are not even using curriculum throughout the African continent to have something that is common throughout the continent to teach our young people about the genesis of colonialism, which is neocolonialism today, and how, as current and future generations, everything they do, they must understand it in that context. Because yes, we'll talk about this company and company there, Glencore there, and so on. And we will not, for instance, talk about Glencore as a consequence of a system which was deliberately developed to make sure that we destabilize, we annihilate, we suffocate, we deprive the African people of their right to exploit their own minerals in a way that will exploit their agenda. Just as an example, industrialization is in the West. These minerals that are being fought for in the DRC, which are causing conflict, are not processed in the African continent. So the market for these minerals, it's in Europe. So there's no way Europe, because there's demand and supply. The supply is in Africa. The demand is in Europe. There's no way that these corporations that are in Europe will not do everything possible to co-opt some of the Africans, either as non-state players or as state players, or through political means, using capital as a means to make sure that somehow conflict is sustained. That's why I hear what the academics are saying about 30-year cycle and so on. I don't necessarily, yes, from an academic point of view, you may have looked at the pattern as academics and so on. But where I'm sitting as a politician, from my own context, that 30-year cycles become irrelevant, because towards 25, 30 years, what actually happens in terms of patterns is that the neo-colonialists will have developed new methods of advancing their own cause, which will necessarily not bring the conflict to a complete stop, to a complete end, but they will have developed. So during that 30 years, 25 years, the neo-colonialists developed new methods of ensuring that they continue to colonize the African continent. So for me, tools like the ACE, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and so on, it's something that we can use as a tool to try and thwart these efforts from the West, where demand for our minerals is mainly, so that we do industrialization, so that among ourselves as Africans, we can discuss and say, how do we develop our economy such that we share the wealth of our continent, such that everybody must be a beneficiary, and those who come external must come in as people who are pleading to be either partners or to be included in the equation, and as far as the economy of the African continent is concerned, because currently they are in charge. So my view is that the sooner we accelerate as Africans our own capacity to industrialize, so that when we exploit the minerals, it's in the context of decolonizing ourselves economically, rather than us competing to exploit the minerals in a way that we compete ourselves, we kill ourselves as Africans, so that we can then export the minerals to Europe. And Europe gains more capital, more foreign direct investment, which we later want from Europe into Africa, actually is us who may have enhanced it from the beginning, because we take our raw minerals and take them to Europe for exploitation, and it comes back here in a form of either finished products or in a form of capital, which has been developed through our own minerals processed mainly in Europe. And Europe is the central aggressor, the central feature in as far as the colonization of the African continent is concerned. We should, as Africans, be discussing how do we use these minerals, for instance, as you were saying, the doctor, the capital that will accrue from the minerals to increase our capacity through the Inga project, for instance, to increase the megawatts so that we can be self-sufficient, self-reliant, self-developing as Africa in as far as energy security is concerned. But we are diverted because Europeans, through their countries and through their companies and so on, have co-opted some of the Africans who you can't blame completely, because the capitalist system is brutal. People are living in poverty. They are also trying to establish their own companies. That's how they get co-opted, knowingly or unknowingly, into some of these agendas that emerge from neocolonialism. So I'm just saying, from where I sit, as a child who grew up in the African continent, having gone through the apartheid system and colonialism, for me, it will be an injustice for future generations if everything we do, we are unable to, not that we are unable, but somehow we ignore the context of history, where we come from, and how this is manifesting itself differently now, where we are in terms of development as the African continent. Deputy Minister, I don't know whether you will want to make a comment now, so that the doctor can also encompass whatever comment you want to make. If you don't want, that's fine. There's no problem.
Chairperson, good morning to yourself and to Dr. Vasu. I just wanted maybe just to make one probable submission, Chair, that we do substantively appreciate the role of our court as a prominent non-state actor of South Africa that are active within the peace and security architecture. And we have been very inspired, Chair, by the resilience and the consistency that our court have displayed, and they have actually won the trust not only of the South African government, but of many African governments, and are actually a reference point and an opinion maker in regards to the resolution of conflicts, and obviously a repository as it relates to peace diplomacy. And I think we are obviously, just wanting to underpin that the central topology of the work is obviously to complement what the South African government, but other governments within the African continent are doing. And I just wanted to give that positive commendation. Thank you very much, Lalo.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Over to you, Doc.
No, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for that. As you are aware, we interact very, very frequently, almost on a weekly basis with DIRCO, DG Dango, Deputy Minister, even Minister. We are in constant contact, simply because the work that we do impacts a lot on the work that DIRCO does. We are also keep the presidency informed, so that it doesn't come as a shock to them that we are in a certain country doing something. Our ambassadors are always informed in advance before we arrive. And I have to say, Deputy Minister, thank you very much to DIRCO, because the embassies do extend the hospitality to us, and when necessary, if we require protection, etc. As you will recall, 2 years ago, when my colleague, our head of research, Senzo Ngubane, was in a life-threatening situation in South Sudan during COVID. It was our special forces and our embassy that assisted to evacuate him from there. So thank you very much for that. Let me start with the Honorable Meshwa. Tata, you have been a long time in Parliament. We respect you there for that period of time and your contributions. Let me say on silencing the guns. A few years ago, the head of the Peace and Security Commission, Commissioner Lamamra, later Foreign Minister of Algeria, and I were invited to the United Nations Security Council to present on the silencing the guns. So it was to be one state actor, one non-state actor, and we both presented now. We said silencing the guns by 2020, so it was before that that we went to the Security Council. And some of the members of the Security Council, almost in a very patronizing and humiliating way, you know, said, okay, so you said you're going to silence the guns by 2020. Is this realistic? What are you going to do? And almost made it seem like, you know, we're kind of stupid to have said we're going to silence the guns by 2020 when everybody knows that is not going to happen. Well, what we explained to them was that it was not that we ourselves believed we were going to silence the guns in 2020, nor do we believe we're going to silence it by 2030. That will be delusional given the current dynamics on the continent. But what we wanted to do was to highlight to our people on the continent and to people globally the repercussions of not silencing the guns. And so it became a campaign, and we were part of that campaign, a huge campaign by the African Union, involving arts and culture and politics and bringing companies in, etc., to talk about why we need to silence the guns. And we set a target of 2020. I was there when that decision was taken. We set a target of 2020 so that we give ourselves an aspirational date to work towards, and then use that to rally and mobilize young people across the continent, decision makers across the continent. The extension to 2030, we had a meeting last year in Nairobi convened by the new special envoy on silencing the guns, Mohamed Chambas, the former chair of ECOWAS and a former minister from Ghana, who's a highly skilled diplomat and has been in conflict situations for a long time. And we had long discussions with the team in Nairobi to look at a program towards 2030. Again, do we think we're going to silence the guns by 2030? No, we're not. But do we need a campaign to highlight the issues around it? Absolutely. And that's what we are doing. Now, let me say, I said tongue-in-cheek at the UN Security Council, because as you know, the permanent 5 members are there, all arms producers. And I said to them, well, if we want to silence the guns by 2020, we can do that very easily. All of you who produce arms, just stop producing them. And then we will silence the guns. It's very easy to do that. Of course, I'm not sure that they appreciated that comment. But what I want to indicate, yesterday, this is yesterday, the same Swedish organization, SIPRI, produces an annual assessment of arms products across the world, production across the world. And they teamed up with an American institute called the Stimson Institute, which is also leading in the field of peace, security, and national relations. And they produced yesterday the trends in volume of global arms transfers. This is shocking. I'm going to give you just, I photographed the one slide. It says global arms transfers 3.3% lower than 2014-2018. Overall decrease in all regions except Europe. 5 largest exporters account for 75% of all exports. The US and Western Europe account for 72% of all arms exports between 2019 and 2023. And that number has gone up from 62% between 2014 and 2018. So when you talk about silencing the guns, you know, we have to look also at who's producing the guns and where are they coming from. We used to produce, we're not producing that much anymore. In Africa, the production is minuscule, if ever. Sudan was producing anti-personnel carriers and some of the others were producing, but nothing of any significance. So again, Chair, we are net importers of weapons of mass of destruction on the continent. So just to contextualize that, the life cycle of a conflict is 30 years. People in conflict have their own dynamics. It's not that people are going to, I don't think people in conflict sit down and say, somebody said it's 30 years, we're now at 20 years, let's wait for another 10 years. No, no, no. The conflicts have their own dynamics. This was somebody who did a study in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and in Europe. You must know that the Balkans region, where you are now seeing conflict again, that the Balkans region erupts in conflict every several decades for the last several centuries. So it's not like this is a new phenomenon. And those conflicts last a long, long time. So this is just the nature of conflict. In fact, when I talked to a colleague and said to him who's in this game, I said, you know, after 30 years, we are seeing a resurgence in conflict across the world. And I'm just concerned what is the trajectory? Where are we going with this? And he said to me, Pastor, you know, maybe we are going back to the natural order of things, because the last 30 years seem to have been just a period in history when we have seen probably the fewest conflicts in the world. Now, surprising as it might sound, but it was the fewest number of conflicts in the world. Now we are, unfortunately, in a dangerous trajectory because arms production has doubled, tripled all over the world. And we are moving fast into a militarized world. And the gains that we made in the last 30 years to move towards dialogue are seriously being undermined. So let me just state that point when it comes to this conflict in the DRC. And I was in discussions with Minister Jeff Radebe last week when, in his capacity as special envoy, we sat and discussed this matter. And I was saying to him that we can have the SADC deployment. It's necessary. It has to be done. It was a decision that was taken. It's not going to be an easy mission. It's going to be a very difficult mission. But it has to be done in parallel with a political process. There's no way you're going to resolve this conflict militarily. It will only be resolved through dialogue and through a political settlement. And I know for a fact that there are behind the scenes a lot of discussions to try to resolve this politically, whilst at the same time, you know, you have to deal with insurgents on the ground. You have to deal with those who are threatening the security of the population, etc. So just to underscore that, somebody asked the question about whether we as a CORD are involved. Absolutely. We are involved in Sudan right now in back-channel negotiations. We are involved in this area in back-channel negotiations. So this is the nature of what a CORD does. That is why you never hear of a CORD in the public domain, because a lot of our work is done behind the scenes and in the background. The cobalt large deposits you have raised, international companies making money, private airstrips, all of that is happening. All of that is happening. And the chair is correct about who's benefiting on this. We have been saying now for a long time that unless Africa is able to beneficiate its natural assets, industrialize, create employment, and I have predicted, and I've given this prediction now in a number of forums, we have about 1 to 2 decades left, beyond which the challenges will be of development in many, many African countries will become irreversible. And we will see the emergence of a dystopian future in a number of countries. So what is a dystopian future? It's what you see in Haiti right now. What you see in Haiti right now is not far-fetched. And therefore, we need to think, how do we deal with the situation? It's a very, very urgent situation. The children used in the mines, on the one hand, yes, it is a devastating thing when it comes to child labor. Myself, my background was as a human rights lawyer. We don't want to see this. But for families, on the other hand, whether it is the sweatshops in India or the mines in the DRC, a lot of them will tell you it is livelihoods and the only livelihoods that families have. So it's a double-edged tragedy that we are dealing with. And the solution to all of that is expanding the economy and creating employment and livelihoods for people. There's no substitute to that. So we need to keep our eye on that prize, not just look at that. Now, Chair, you have ruled correctly so, because this is not the forum to discuss the politics inside the country. But I must tell you that, Reverend, I am seized, and we as a court are seized with the matter. We are in touch with our political leaders. We will be talking to your political leaders of your various parties, and you are the leader of a party. Just to say that we have had so many regular peaceful elections in South Africa. And we expect that the political parties will conduct themselves in a way that this will be the same, and we will still be a standard bearer in the world for peaceful elections. I have said as much previously and if you want, Reverend, you could go to the internet, you will get my 2017 Tutu lecture. I delivered the Tutu lecture in 2017, where I addressed South Africans on the topic, civil war or civil peace. South Africans must choose. And I think that speech is as relevant today as it was in 2017. Honorable Powell, you have, I think a lot of the questions are for DIRCO or for Defense to answer. Was this a SADC decision? Yes, it was an official SADC decision at a SADC summit. So it was not individual countries, saying this. And then South Africa's unfunded commitment, well, we are there. We are there with both feet in. Now we have to fund it. And as I said, we have a strategic interest in the DRC. So it's not that we are there altruistically trying to do something because we love the Congolese. I'm sure we love the Congolese too, but we have a very strategic interest there. Honorable Mutusi, South Africa, 60% total deployment. Many businesses are operating there. In whose interest is this deployment, and how do we benefit? Firstly, the numbers when it comes to the companies, etc. This is public knowledge. You can get it from Trade and Industry. You can get it on the internet. It will show you which companies are there. Now, of course, those companies pay tax in South Africa. So we are benefiting from that. And the deployment is as a result of a SADC decision. It was not a 5 or 6 companies requesting the government to make a deployment. So I doubt that this is a deployment that is, I can say for sure, this is not a deployment that is in favor of any companies. Of course, the companies will benefit if there's stability. But this is definitely a decision of SADC. We are a member of SADC. We have a responsibility. in terms of the SADC treaty, etc. So let me say that. Honorable Nkosi, as I said, we need a political solution to this problem in the Eastern Congo. There are efforts that are underway. They are bilateral, they are multilateral, they are being discussed by leaders in the region, they're being discussed by the African Union. In our own country, we are playing a role. And we as an organization, we are also playing a role to try to that. This was one of the reasons, as I said, we were in Burundi, and I did go to meet with the president to have discussions around these to see whether we can't find an amicable way that this can be resolved. The stakes are high. Let make no mistake about it. The stakes are extremely high. And the stakes are high not just for the countries of the region. The stakes are high for even us as a country, but the stakes are high for those multinationals that are there. And in this new geopolitical competition between China and its allies on one side and the US and its allies on the other side, both attempting to dominate the industries of the 21st century, particularly the fourth industrial revolution, whether it comes to semiconductors or aerospace or whatever, they need those resources of the Congo. So we'd be fools to think that we are the only ones as Africans involved here fighting and we are the cause of everything. No. Don't be deluded by that. I've said it publicly on many forums. I was at the Munich Security Forum last year, and I was asked about the relationship between Europe and Africa. And I said, unless you as Europe reset your relationship with Africa, you will continue to have all of those negative images that we see against Europe. So they asked me, what does reset mean? I said, reset is very simple. Reset means do not extract our resources and take them to your country, add value and send them back to us. We are now having millions and millions of young people who are unemployed. It is a threat to us and to our security in Africa today. Tomorrow, it's an existential threat to you, because Africans are not migrating to Russia and China. They are migrating to Europe. And so if we don't create employment, we don't create livelihoods, and you don't assist us by leaving our resources here, bringing your technology, you can still share those resources as much as you want with us. But we must develop, and we have only 1 or 2 decades in which to develop, after which, simply because of demographics, the numbers, because we have not industrialized, because we have not industrialized agriculture, we are in grave danger of having large parts of the continent become dystopian futures, wastelands with the militia groups. What you're seeing in the Eastern Congo, what you're seeing in Sudan, in northern Mozambique, in northern Central African Republic, across the Sahel, that will replicate itself everywhere. And South Africa will not be excluded from that. So we have a huge interest to make sure that this thing is reversed and reversed fast. Enforcing peace. And the issue, Honorable Mpanza, that you raised about private military companies. We are very, very concerned about this. We are concerned about Wagner from Russia. We don't think it's a good development for Africa. We are concerned about Sadat from Turkey. We are equally concerned about the proliferation of American private security contractors across Africa. We are concerned about French and UK private contractors, as well as Ukrainian private contractors across the continent, because we think that we cannot mortgage our security to others across the world who come onto our continent for their own purposes and then are part of this stabilization and extraction. We don't want that. So 1.5 years ago, we approached President Obasanjo, former president of Nigeria, President Kikwete, former president of Tanzania, some of us, and we said, we need a pan-African response to this. And as DG Indirgo knows, because we have discussed this also, we've discussed with our National Security Advisor, Sidney Mufamadi, and with our Defense Minister, Thandi Modise, that what we have done together with President Obasanjo and others, we have set up an entity called EBAN, E-B-A-N, which is a Ghanaian word that comes from the Adinkra community, which means to protect the family. We have been consulting across the continent in the last year. We have gone and consulted with countries overseas as well, and we've said EBAN will do three things. The first is to prepare sovereign governments, police and military special forces to deal with urban warfare and counterinsurgency and counterterrorism. We have assembled already a number of special forces instructors from across the continent in order to do that. Second, to assist with disaster management. With the onset of climate change, we're going to see a lot of disasters across the continent. And thirdly, to assist with humanitarian protection. So this is already on the track. It's something that we're already doing. We will implement this year. And on the flip side of development, we have an entity called Accord Development Consulting that is looking very seriously about agriculture and how to step that up. When I was in Burundi, President Ndayishimiye took us on Sunday, my colleague Senzo and I, the entire day, and showed us very, very successful farming projects in Burundi. We went to a mushroom farm producing 18 tons, just one farm, 18 tons of mushroom, dried mushroom that they are exporting. They are producing bags of mushroom. One bag of 500 kilograms can feed 500 kids for a day in a school on very nutritious meals. They took us to a biomass farm where they're farming cows and they're producing cheese and yogurt. And there's all the many things that are happening. When you talk about the positive things, they are there. But we need to scale. We need to industrialize. We need to beneficiate, and time is against us. So let me then just address very quickly, Chaps. I see time is against us. Are we going to lose soldiers in the DRC? Absolutely. Now, I had a deliberate pause there because I want you to digest that, because you are the Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation. These are questions that are going to come to you and to the Defense Portfolio Committee. You can't think that you're going to go to war and you're not going to lose soldiers, as sad as that might sound. So let's be realistic. We are going to lose soldiers. What we have to do is to mitigate. We have to mitigate, and we have to ensure that we have good preparation so that we can minimize the casualties and we can mitigate our losses. But we will take losses, and unfortunately, that's what comes with the responsibility of putting our soldiers in harm's way, and we have no choice in the matter. I don't wish it on any of our soldiers, but we must be realistic about it. How safe then is it for you to go as civilians to the Eastern Congo? I must tell you, Honorable Mpanza, I've been to all the major conflict spots in the last 30 years, touch wood. I'm still sitting here and talking to you, but I've been in the bush in many places. As my colleagues from DERCO know, we have been in Gaza 3 times. We have spent many times in Gaza, which then was still an operational zone. We have been in Syria on the ground when things were happening. And then here on the continent, we have been in many conflict spots. You have to go with the necessary precautions. You have to go with the necessary support structures. And there again, I must thank our DERCO, because they do afford us that kind of assistance from time to time. The United Nations does the same. We do get their assistance. And individual governments that we have relationships with do provide us with bulletproof vehicles and others to go where we need to go. So yes, you have to take the precautions, but it's not for the faint-hearted. But it gives you a really good perspective. Now, did these people in Sun City gamble and eat food? They definitely ate food because we wanted them to survive at least. Now, did they gamble? I would say I saw some people gambling. I don't think that was avoidable. You know, you're in a public place. We couldn't shut Sun City down at the time. And so, you know, when you're talking, there were 500 participants from the DRC. Add all of those of us who were supporting, etc., you're talking about 1,000 people in this whole operation. Now, even the good Reverend knows that, you know, amongst the pious, there are many gamblers. And so, you know, amongst all these people who came to deal with a serious matter, I'm sure many were tempted to go and gamble in something they hadn't done previously. But it was not that widespread. I wouldn't say that, you know, you can now say we spent our money as South Africa funding other people's gambling in Sun City. So why did we do it in Sun City? We did it in Sun City because it was a contained venue. The parties we needed, there were many venues that were scouted in Africa and elsewhere. It had to be done in Africa. That we were clear about, because this was to be an African solution. And so eventually we settled on Sun City because you could shut it down very quickly. And it's not to dramatize it, but there were threats against those who came from the Congo. And I will end the chair with a very nice, light anecdote. So we were there in Sun City, and we had brought many of the parties. There was a party that was not included called the Mai Mai. They live deep in the jungle. They're armed. They're still there. And many of them are, they speak their local language. They don't speak French or English. They have not really had the opportunity to be educated, etc. But when we sent people to go and find the Mai Mai, they managed to find 2 representatives from the Mai Mai who they could bring. It was important for inclusive dialogue to bring them there. So there they were checked in to the hotel in Sun City. These were 2 people we found who could read and write and, you know, all of that. And then they sent them to the room. And, you know, they walked into the room. They ran out from the room because they said that somebody knows we are here already and our lives are in danger. And how did they come to that conclusion, Chair? They, on the TV, you know, when you enter the room, it says, you know, welcome.
So and so you are welcome. Yeah.
Exactly. So they had their names on the TV. And they thought somebody already knows we are here before we got in the room. And so they ran out of the room, you see. And when the story was related to President Masira, I was there, he just laughed and laughed and laughed, you know. But as funny as it is, you know, it is also a serious matter. And yes, Chair, that's the nature of these things. I thank you for your attention. I'm always happy to come back and address the committee and Reverend Mesho. I'm very happy to address the politicians. I have views on where we should be going as a country in the future. So, yes, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thanks very much. I wish some of these things that we do could become part of the curriculum in our schools, not only for international relations students, but for this young generation, the future, for them to understand, internalize, and know our history, so that they don't just become people who speak English and they think speaking English is when you speak English well, is the best thing ever to have achieved, you know, because I mean, the direction our youth is taking now, in as far understanding where their forefathers come from, it's worrisome, I must say, throughout the African continent. But let's hope one day we'll have Africa as a country, then things might improve with some independent states, just like the way Germany is and the US is. Yeah, but otherwise, thank you very much. We look forward to working with you in the future. By the way, I'm one of the people you trained when I was still in the youth league.
I know. Way
Yes,
back in 92, I think it was.
Exactly, yeah. So thanks very much. One of your products, yeah.
I
But
hope
thanks.
it's helping you, Chair.
Yeah, it is. You can see I'm in the right space now.
The president of Burundi, one of the reasons he was so hospitable that he said, I want to thank you for giving those skills to us. And he said, I'm using it today as president. So we are very happy.
No, those skills have come in very handy, I must say. I didn't see it by then because I was still young, but I can see now how you prepared us for the future. So thanks very much, and continue.
Thank
to
you
do
very
that
much.
for
Take
future
care, everybody.
generations. Okay, thanks very much. Let's go to the next item. Over to you, Deputy Minister. Okay. DG.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. So the next item is the third quarter report for the department. I'm not going to give opening remarks. I'm going to ask that our team from the Chief Operations Office, led by Ms. Baloy, give us the presentation, and then we can add in terms of the discussion afterwards. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Baloy, over to you.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Gigi. Good morning to the Portfolio Committee members and all the colleagues and all the members of the public that are listening to these proceedings. We will be taking the Portfolio Committee members through the Q3 performance information of the department. This report will be front-loaded with information on the core under programs 2 to 4 to enable the department to highlight the key issues and also the achievements in the implementation of our foreign policy. And then we will then go to program 1, which obviously will reflect the compliance issues. If you are, in terms of the report itself, you will see in Q3, we actually were able to manage to achieve 22 of the 22 targets that we've actually set. You will see in the slide that is shown there that program 1 had 7 targets and we managed to achieve all. Program 2, 3, and then program 3, 5. Program 4 is 6, and then program 5, which is our transfer, is only 1 target. I will then start with program 2, as I already mentioned. Here we're talking about our 3 bilateral branches, which is Africa, Americas and Europe, and then Asia and Middle East. And the report will have about 3 different elements, which is our political reports. Then we will move to our regional trade and investment, and then we'll then move to our regional tourism promotion in that order through the regions as already mentioned. Then I will start with politics under Africa. Here we're talking about structured bilateral mechanism and high-level visit and also political engagement with the various countries within the continent that I've just spoken about, which is Africa. The first one that you will see that was actually undertaken under the period under review is a diplomatic and political consultation with Zambia, where our minister was the lead there. The second one was the third session of the South African, together with Namibia Binational Commission, also led by the president. Here, deliberation actually were dominated by both sides, who actually underscored the excellent bilateral relations and also to continue with the long-standing historical bonds of solidarity, also ensuring that the socio-economic and common cultural heritage underpinned by a wide range of sectoral cooperation will take place. And through this, they were able to actually even sign the MOU under education between the president of both countries. And then we also had the other one by South Africa and also Mauritania, and which was also led by our DM Mashiro, where a lot of discussions actually took place with regard to AFCFTA and the rest, including agriculture and so forth. I will then move to Europe and Americas. I'll just browse through the others, not because with the understanding that the members have gone through the presentation. As you can see that the slides are about 60. So I'll just highlight some of the important ones that I believe that we need to just highlight as we're taking through this report. Through Americas and Europe, in this region, you will see that under the period under review, political engagement in its various forms took place as follows. We had the 13 SASU annual bilateral forum political working group. That one was led by our Ambassador Domo. South African Peru inaugural political consultation led by our GM Brothers with the discussions there. The third meetings of South Africa and also Netherlands Joint Commission for Cooperation led by our Minister Pando. We also had the sixth South Africa-Norway high-level consultation by GM Brothers, where he also undertook South Africa Belarus political consultation, and also a meeting with the Dominican Republic Foreign Minister as during this period by our Deputy Minister Brothers. Under the period under review, we also had a state visit by King Willem-Alexander and the Queen Maxima of Netherlands, where the president actually led on this. This visit and the high-level delegation put a renewed focus on the strong cooperation that exists between the two countries. And the focus areas were particularly on trade and investment, energy, as well as education, and also science and innovation. A memorandum of understanding there was actually signed, which focused on the field of higher education, technical and also vocational training, and a letter of intent on defense cooperation during the visit by the two. We also had a foreign policy working group meeting with Germany. We also had the Federal Minister for European and also International Affairs of Austria by our minister, and also our minister was visited by the Minister of Ukraine during the period under review. I will then move to the last desk under political, where obviously then still outlining the political issues in terms of our structured bilateral mechanism, high-level visit, and also our political engagement in this. We, amongst the others that this region undertook, was the 8th South Africa China Binational, which was led by our Deputy President, President Mashatile. In this, you will see that a lot of work was reviewed for current framework of the sectoral committees, which include more departments and other critical areas of cooperation. We also had our third Indonesia-South Africa Foreign Office consultation by our Ambassador Lali. We also had the state visit during this period under review by our president to Qatar. And here, a number of silent outcomes were actually agreed upon, and there were some memorandum of understanding that were actually signed. Here, you will see also there was also a commitment that was obtained from Qatar to increase investment towards into our country. And also the visit by the president also restored the Qatari confidence in our state-owned DNL company. There was also some ministerial meetings that took place during that time, just prior to the visit by the president, together with our minister. Then moving forward, there was a meeting with the Syrian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the expertise by our minister, and also the visit by our Deputy President to both Singapore and also Vietnam. During this visit, you will see that the two countries were able to showcase their commitment towards enhancing their cooperation, and also in many other areas that they agreed upon, which includes your water management, your vocational education, the digital economy, pandemic preparedness, and also air connectivity, also including the prevention and combating of wildlife offenses through the two countries. Then I will then move to the second section that will be talking to our trade and investment, as already alluded prior. In the terms of our trade and investment, there are various economic activities that are actually undertaken to be able to just further and strengthen our economy, which obviously involves the hosting of seminars, networking sessions, and also engagement with potential high-level investors and also importers towards the regions, as I will be going through. I will start with Africa. Through here, you will see that Africa there was an identification of possible mutual investment opportunities by the country, which obviously will allow our strengthening of bilateral relations through mutual benefits. The engagement undertaken by the missions where the first one you will see is the one in Lagos, where they met with the Nigerian Association of Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines, and also agriculture, and also South African community during the period under review. They also in Benin, they met with the Minister of Trade and Industry. In Mali, they held business seminars in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce there in order for to promote the outward investment from South Africa. And then Moroni, they met with the Indian Ocean Export Company. And also, if you move forward, you will see the mission in Port Louis also met with the Mauritian Minister of Health and Wellness, and also agro-industry and food security. In that, I will then move to our next region, which is Americas and Europe, also just still talking around the issues of trade and industry. You will see that the engagement by the mission here to advance our trade and also investment that took place as follows. Obviously, we had Ottawa mission also, which held a meeting with DNL for them to be able to discuss the possible market penetration in Canada and for DNL product and services to be offered in Canada. The mission in Washington also met with the South African Citrus Growers Association and also the U.S. National Pork Producers Council and also the U.S. Department of Agriculture in this period of review that we are talking about. The missions across this region were able to participate in various forums and also activities to advance our trade and investment. You will see that there was the AGOA forum, which obviously discussed how to improve investment by U.S. companies and unlock the opportunities provided by AGOA itself here in South Africa. And the 2023 Africa Accelerating Conference also took place in Toronto, and our mission in Toronto participated in that. The Washington mission also participated in the Annapolis Sailboat Show, which provided an opportunity for the South African boat building industry to access the US market. There were various others, like the 10th edition of the South African Tomorrow Investment Conference, which took place in New York, the Global Conference of Women in Mining in Chile, the Trade Food Fair in Munich, and also the 6th Russia Energy Week, which obviously took place in Moscow. I will then move to the next region, which is Asia and Middle East, still under the trade and investment. Also, just to note the activities that actually took place under this period under review. The mission in Beijing participated in the China Mining Conference, which provided an opportunity to showcase investment and trade opportunities for enhanced mining cooperation with China. And the mission in Canberra participated at the International Mining Resources Conference also. And still with Canberra, they also participated in the Australian footwear and accessories, where about 15 companies were able to showcase various South African products in the National Pavilion that was under South African banner. And then South Africa was also represented at the China International Import-Export, with the participation where our Deputy President was at a high-level program of the event, where he also made speeches there. Here, about 40 South African companies were actually utilized, and they saw an opportunity for them to be able to engage Chinese for trade and also to be partners for investment going forward. The Department of Agriculture, just to highlight one, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform, and also Rural Development met with Animal and Plant Health and Indonesian Ministry of Agriculture, where discussions were regarding the importing of cattle and soybeans. In addition, discussions are still in progress on opportunities to actually develop new markets in terms of your livestock and also meat products. We believe that South African organizations in South Africa are obviously also pursuing the halal recognition and certificate so that they are ready for export of those products in Indonesia. Singapore and South Africa signed an agreement to enhance cooperation in areas such as trade, investment, skill transfer, and defense. And this obviously ignited many opportunities for us to be able to increase and deepen our political and trade investment relation with the country Singapore. The other one that I want to just highlight is the mission in Kuwait. Kia expressed interest to be able to consider investment opportunities in terms of infrastructure, transportation, energy, and healthcare sectors in South Africa. We realized that Kuwait was actually expressed their interest and also their happiness in terms of the investment that has actually grown up to $2 billion. We'll then move to the third one, which is tourism. In terms of tourism here, the missions on the continent continue to engage relevant stakeholders on a variety of matters that can benefit South Africa in terms of its tourism industry. For Africa, South African tourism collaborated with the mission in Harare to hold the tourism networking event with key Zimbabwean stakeholders and also the media. In Lagos, they met with the South African tourism met with West Africa tourism and the industry there to address challenges that are experienced by the two countries, obviously, and also discuss the opportunities for mutual benefit. The mission in Guinea, Conakry, met with the travel agency there just to promote the inbound tourism, and the mission in Bujumbura also held a mission with the Sadhguru Travels as part of its strategy to ensure that they foster relations for travel agencies in order to promote South Africa as a tourism destination. You will see that obviously as they do that through tourism opportunities in the continent, there are many opportunities that they are able to highlight for the region itself to be able to do the inbound in South Africa. I will then move to the region of Americas and Europe. Here, obviously, the mission also just continue to engage the relevant stakeholders on matters that will be beneficial for our industry itself, and they do that through targeting a number of outreach. And you will see as we highlight the tourism report that the programs obviously will rally from your expos, your fairs, and so forth. So some of the things that they undertook here, some of the various activities that they undertook during this period of report is that Munich participated in the 2023 Africa Showcase Tourism event. In Lisbon, they participated in the International Travel Golf Market in South Africa in support of our South African Tourism Board. And the mission in Chile took part in the Chilean Tourism Expo and subsequent business networking session between South African tourism and the South African Chamber of Commerce and their Chilean counterpart took place. We also were able to also partake in the tourism film art held in Portugal, which saw about 10 South African films submitted, and they all won the award during that participation. In this region, you will also see that the US is a lucrative market with the tourists who can assist the tourism economy in South Africa, and there's an increased flights of Delta Airline into the country, which is promising, and it could mean that there will be a lot of opportunity and inbound into the country. Then I will move to the last region in terms of Program 2, which is Asia and Middle East, still reporting on tourism itself, on the activities that were undertaken during this period. The head of mission in New Delhi led an Indian trade delegation to the 2023 Africa Trade Indaba, which took place here in South Africa. Various missions in the Middle East region, also such as Doha, Abu Dhabi, Tehran, Jeddah, Amman, also made use of the various tourism and cultural marketing events to be able to just highlight South Africa as a tourism destination. There's also one, the Saudi airline has resumed their Jeddah Johannesburg flights after a 3-year of hiatus. So the inaugural flight between the two countries obviously has was opened on the 1st. And this obviously then means that they will be able to enhance tourism and also connectivity in terms of the many other areas in the SADC, and also improve our tourism in the country. I will then move to Program 3. Under Program 3, what we have 3 reports on the outcomes of the multilateral and also multi-state organizations that reflect South Africa's participation and also interest, which includes that of African agenda. And here we compile them under the following areas, which is the peace and security, the human rights, and also the economic and social development. As already mentioned, I will just highlight some of the issues and then move through. During the UNSC, South Africa made statements in their participations of this meeting in accordance with the work that is taken during the United Nations Security Council meetings. And these meetings are mostly aimed at advancing international peace and security. And South Africa participated in the following open debates of the UNSC. You will see they are mentioned there, from the main General Assembly of the UNSC to the 42nd General Conference of UNESCO and the 25th United Nations World Tourism Organization General Assembly, the Women, Peace and Security Focal Point Network Conference on the sideline. And also then these were all sorry about that, Chair. I will then move to a system of governance. One report here was reported on in terms of the maintaining of our 60 positions. And then in terms of continental cooperation here, one report that we focus on the inaugural edition of the Lome Peace and Security Forum. In terms of our South-South cooperation, you will realize that here, that's where we talk about your BRICS, your IPSA, your IORA. All of these meetings that were undertaken were outlined in the report, and you will be able to just see what was achieved through that. I'll move to Program 4. Program 4 has got about 6 targets, and of the 6 targets, all of them were met. I'll just zoom into the protocol 1. The protocol services that were rendered in terms of incoming and outcoming, you will see that incoming it was 7 during this period under review. Outgoing it was then 11. I will then skip the consular services that were rendered and just zoom into the legalized documents. We managed to legalize about 10,648. And in terms of Program 1, you will note that we have about 7 targets. And of the 7 targets, all the targets were met. Just to zoom into the report that was provided for the implementation of the digital strategy. The digital strategy obviously reflects the achievement against the following strategic objectives that you will see: the modernized data storage application, network, telephony, and cyber security infrastructure, the automation of the digital business processes, and also just to enable support mobile and also remote digital capabilities within the department, and also just to secure and protect the department's digital environment. So the report has covered all those. And there's also one progress report which is implemented towards our audit action plan. That the audit action plan, just to note by the portfolio committee that we drafted the audit action plan, and it was presented to the audit steering committee on the 11th, and it has been adopted and approved as such. It has been presented to all the committees per se. So I will then move to Program 5, which talks to one target. One quarterly report on the payment of South Africa's contribution to international organization, reflecting total payment of about 151,727, and 445 was submitted. Thank you, Chair. I think I'll just hand over to the CFO to just take us through the financial report. Thank you very much. Thank you, DG and CFO. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. Good afternoon, Chairperson, Honorable Chair, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. I'll take you through the financial report in terms of Q3. Currently, the department has still has 5 programs, which is administration, international relations, international cooperation, public diplomacy and state protocol, and international transfers. The budget, after the adjusted estimate, has moved up to 6.8 billion. And what we have drawn for Q3 is 1.4 billion at a budget rate, but then what was spent is 1.7 billion at a spot rate. As you can note, you would notice, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, that we have overspent in terms of our drawings in Program 2, 3, 4, and 5, And these are all the programs that are affected by the foreign exchange fluctuation. With the exception of the international transfers, we have overspent simply because the amount that was paid there for the African Union and the SADC was not planned for to be paid in Q3. However, it was planned to be paid in Q4 based on us being able to honor the requirement. We had to fast track the payment and make it in Q3. If I move on to slide number 57, you will notice in terms of the economic classification, our budget for compensation of employees has remained the same as 3 billion during the adjusted E&E, and what was drawn in Q3 was 781 million. And what was spent there is 881. You will also notice in terms of our compensation of employees, in terms of our goods and services, in terms of our transfers and payment of capital, all the items were overspent based on the foreign exchange fluctuation. If you compare the cash that was drawn in South Africa using a budget rate and the cash that was utilized in the missions abroad, exchange at a spot rate. So that is currently the problem that the department is trying to manage with National Treasury. And then in slide number 58, we are trying to explain, Honorable Chair, that from the expenditure in terms of the third quarter of from what we have spent of 1.7 compared to what we projected of 1.4, we then show a higher expenditure of about 21% than what we have projected. And the cumulative expenditure as at end of December is sitting at 5.5 billion compared to the budget of 6.8 billion, which represent 81% of the budget. So overall, the department has not overspent its budget. However, on a quarterly basis, if you look at the cash drawings versus the cash spent, that's where you will notice the foreign exchange implications. Then when you look at the straight line projection, we are looking at the department should have been already at 75%. And we have a 6% variance, which is mainly due to the expenditure for the BRICS summits and also the general cost of living salary adjustment and the high exchange rates that we've been experiencing over the year. And in terms of the summary now per program, in program 1, what we projected was 445 million, but we spent 385. And this is one program where we are noticing a low spending, which is still due to some outstanding invoices that were expected to be paid in the third quarter, relating to the transfer of officials abroad, which talks to your storage, which talks to the insurance, which talks to freight services. However, those invoices were only received in the fourth quarter. In program 2, from the projected expenditure of 812 million, we spent 992 million. This is the area where we are experiencing a high expenditure spending, which is due to cost of living adjustment, which was announced in 2023 for the wage agreement by DPSA, as well as the depreciation of rand against major foreign currencies. Program 3, we also overspend, as you would you can see, and also in this area, the overspending is around cost of living adjustment that was announced by DPSA, where they said department should absorb that adjustment, and also the issue of the rand depreciation as compared to major foreign currencies. And in program 5, as I've already explained, what happened in this quarter is that we had to fast track the payment for the African Union and Southern African Development Community, which was planned to be paid in the fourth quarter, but we had to fast track it and paid it in the third quarter. And this was the amount that was received by the department to cover for the foreign exchange fluctuation. However, we prioritize the membership fees for the AU and the SADC for us to be able to honor that commitment that we have made to those international organizations. Thank you, DG, and thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thanks, Mrs. Bengu, the CFO for DERCO. DG, is there anything you may want to amplify?
No, Chair. There's nothing that I wish to amplify at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. There's the report. Can we have participants? Okay, honorable members, I take it that the report was succinctly clear from the department and that the portfolio committee is satisfied with the extent to which the department has implemented its mandate, has sought to work very hard to achieve the targets, and has accordingly accounted, as it has just happened now, to the portfolio committee as part of implementing South Africa's constitution, of making sure that Parliament's mandate is executed. As you know, the Parliament responsible for three things is to do oversight on the executive, public participation, and lawmaking. So today we're executing one of the critical pillars of the responsibilities of Parliament, which is holding the executive to account. We want to thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for leading the team to come and account to the portfolio committee. Thank the DG, the Dango, and your team, your staff, for making sure that you don't cut corners by preparing a report for the portfolio committee. We want to thank the staff of the portfolio committee for making sure that the transmission of today's meeting is seamless without glitches. We also want to thank you, honorable members, for the engagements starting from the presentation of the doctor on the situation in the DRC and the second presentation by the department on the report to the portfolio committee. We will deal with the minutes in the next meeting. And this is how we come to the end of today's meeting. And I wish you luck in the engagements of this afternoon in Parliament.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chairperson.
Yes, what's yes.
Sorry to disturb. Isn't this not covering African Renaissance also?
I thought
because
so.
Yes, have they covered? I was listening, but I did not get the presentation of the African Renaissance.
Mrs. Bengu?
Chair, if I may?
Yes, DG?
There's a short presentation that the ARF has prepared as well. It won't take long if you don't mind them doing it very quickly.
Okay, I had already closed the meeting, so we'll reopen the meeting. I thought in the accounting which was presented by Mrs. Bengu, it was covered, but it means I was wrong. I'm sorry, honorable members. Over to you, DG.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to ask the...
Thanks for alerting us, Honorable Mbanza.
If Mr. Sibola can just quickly run through the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Portfolio Committee members, DM voters, DG, DDGs, members of the public, as well as colleagues. I'll take you through the short ARF presentation Firstly, by highlighting the achievement for quarter 3, where we had, out of the 8 targets that we had for the quarter, there's 3 that were achieved. I think, Chairperson, just to highlight the nature of the ARF being reactive by nature, you'll have the first 4 targets where during that particular quarter we had no proposals that were presented before the advisory committee, hence the non-achievement for the first 4 targets on the slide. However, the cumulative performance for the ARF, you will see, for example, quarter 4, there will be an achievement for socioeconomic development, as well as the responses that should we receive for the humanitarian assistance, the request for humanitarian assistance that we have sent and presented through to Treasury. You'll have achievement for those other 2 targets. Then the remaining 4 targets to your right, there's the one for closed projects that we are also working to finalize during quarter 4. So for the year from April to March, you'll have a better performance for the ARF as we close the 4th quarter. Just to take you through each program, administration, we had during quarter 3 proposals that were evaluated by the committee, assistance to the humanitarian assistance to the state of Palestine, as well as we had special envoys to South Sudan, as well as the Great Lakes region. Monitoring of our active projects with in line with the concurrence letters that was achieved. Closeout projects, we've got 4 that we've scheduled to close out during the quarter 4, and then one quarterly report for the quarter 3 has been achieved. Prevention and resolution of conflict, we've got the 2 requests that I've highlighted previously for special envoys, both to South Sudan as well as the Great Lakes. Those are done through a pre-approved budget that we obtained during August 2023 to fund any collect peace processes that we will undertake during the current as well as the following financial years. Socioeconomic development, there were no proposals that we received during this particular quarter. The next slide. Provision of humanitarian assistance, there's one request that I've highlighted on the previous 2 slides for the state of Palestine, which we're awaiting the outcome and signing off through the Minister of Finance for the implementation of this project. Human resource development, currently under this quarter, there were no proposals received. And then the last one is promotion of democracy and good governance. For quarter 3, we did not have any proposals. However, there is a project that is currently under implementation, which will be on the next slide, that talks to that program. The IEC project on the development of principles and guidelines governing social media in elections on the continent, that is currently under implementation. The guidelines were adopted during November in Benin at the meeting of the Association of the African Electoral Authorities. So they're at the stage now where these guidelines are being socialized, and they were launched during February, actually. So they're at the stage of socialization now through the various election management bodies. Then you'll have the 2 funded through the DRC peace process pre-approved budget. As I've highlighted previously, the special envoys to South Sudan, as well as the special envoy to DRC, as well as the Great Lakes. Chairperson and members, just to take you through our financial reporting for Q3, our appropriated funds is 49.8 million. Investment income, which arises from the interest that is generated from the cash in the bank account with the Reserve Bank, is 48 million. Local and foreign aid assistance, which is our expenditure line item, 59.2 million, resulting in the surplus for quarter 3 of 38.7 million. Then cash and cash equivalents, cash in the bank, we've got 765 million. 765.8 million. These are funds that are funding the current projects that we're implementing. Receivables is relating to the loan to Cuba We've had the payment during December. As per the terms and conditions of the agreement, they did make the payment in December. Then the next payment for the loan is due in June 2024. Then the total liabilities are the provisions relating to the various projects that are under implementation. The total for that is 291.6 million rands. Thank you very much, Chairperson. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Gyaleboga. Honorable members, I want to put it to you again. That's the presentation. Is there anyone who wants to make a comment or pose a question? Okay, I take it that just like the presentation earlier of the department, members are content. They are satisfied with the presentation. I had already done the closing remarks of the meeting. Therefore, the meeting is officially brought to an end. Thanks very much, Honorable. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.